Hello, today is Thursday, the 21st of April, 2022. My name is Megan Hernandez, and I'm interviewing Denny Garces for the Texas Archives at Texas A&M University, Kingsville. This is part of the Voces of the Pandemic Oral History Project in partnership with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. Please know, Ms. Garces, that this recorded interview will be placed in the South Texas Archives at the Texas A&M University, Kingsville, and shared with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. If there is anything you do not wish to answer or talk about, especially given that your recording may appear online, I will honor your wishes. Also, if there's anything that you do not want to talk about, please bring it up and we will talk about it and take it out. Because we are not conducting this interview in person, I need to record you consenting. So I'll ask you a series of 6 questions. Please say, yes, I agree, or no, I do not agree after each one. There are 4 questions we need to make sure you agree to before we go on. South Texas Archives at Texas A&M Kingsville wishes to archive your interview along with any other photographs and other documentations at the South Texas Archives at Texas A&M Kingsville University. We will retain copyright of the interview and any other materials you donate to the South Texas Archives at Texas A&M University, Kingsville. First question, do you give us consent to archive your interview and your materials at the Jernigan Library at Texas A&M University, Kingsville?
Yes, I do give consent.
Question number 2, do you grant South Texas Archives at the Jernigan Library at Texas A&M University, Kingsville copyright over the interview and any material you provide?
Yes, I do.
Question number 3, do you agree to allow South Texas Archives at the Jernigan Library at Texas A&M University, Kingsville to post this interview on the internet where it may be viewed by people around the world?
Yes, I do.
4th, do you grant South Texas Archives at the Jernigan Library at Texas A&M University, Kingsville consent to share your interview and your materials with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin for inclusion in the Voces of the Pandemic Oral History Project, which will include posting the interview on the internet?
Yes, I do.
5th, do you wish for us to share the rest of your interview in your public file available to researchers at the South Texas Archives at the Jernigan Library at Texas A&M Kingsville University?
Yes, that's fine with me.
And then finally, question 6, on occasions, Voces receives requests for journalists who wish to contact our interview subjects. We only deal with legitimate news outlets. Do you give consent for us to share your phone numbers or your email with these journalists?
Yes, I do.
All right, thank you. So now we will get on with the questions. Ms. Denny, tell me a little bit about yourself.
I am 36 years old. I am married and I have 3 boys. I'm a mom to 3 boys. My oldest is 15. I have a 7-year-old and I have a 3-year-old son. And I've been married to my husband for 15 years.
All right. Tell me a little bit about your sons. What are their names, their ages, and who are they personally?
My oldest is Giovanni. He, like I said, he is 15. And we are all originally from, well, our family came from San Antonio, but we moved here to Kingsville because of my husband's job. And the boys have had to acclimate a little bit, but it hasn't been too difficult. Kingsville was pretty friendly as it is, so it wasn't too bad. My oldest is a sophomore at Academy High, and then I have a 7-year-old. His name is Javier. He has autism, and my youngest is 3, who doesn't go to school, but he is in daycare, and he is actually through the Mark Cisneros Center for Youth here in town.
It's great to know them. And then a little bit about your husband.
My husband is ex-Navy. We were stationed in Norfolk, Virginia, and he was actually out on one of the carriers. Once he finished his term serving at the Navy, we went ahead and transferred back home to Texas. And we were in San Antonio for a little while, and then he was picked up here through the Navy, and he's a contractor for them here on base. So he works as an aircraft mechanic here at the base in town.
All right, thank you. So now I'll move in more to the COVID-19 question. So tell me a little bit about your experience with COVID-19.
Well, I think that the experience that I did gain through COVID was probably very unexpected, as it was for many. I don't think I knew what to expect from the beginning. I did get COVID myself. Actually, in our household, everyone but my oldest son was the only one that did not get COVID. And the symptoms were pretty harsh I think the harshest for me. So, and then as far as my extended family that doesn't live close, there was probably only 2 of them that did not get COVID. My mother, my sisters, everyone else did get COVID as well. So yeah, it was tough.
So then how did you first learn about COVID-19? Was it through the radio, through the TV? Was it people around you? Give me a little bit of inside knowledge.
It was confusing, but I did see it through the media outlets, online, through social media, and then as well through the news casters and everything. However, the information that I think that they were giving out seemed confusing to me. It's just one of those things that I never really expected for it to become the magnitude that it became. I know that we saw other countries through the news being affected by it, but I don't think that we thought it was going to get to that extent here in the States. Or maybe, I mean, for me, I just didn't expect it to be like this, the way it was. So it was a little confusing, the information that they were giving out. I think that it was a lot of fear that was being placed out there. And because of the uncertainty of it all, I think that was the greatest fear that for us at least, I think that was the biggest misconception of everything, just because we didn't know how we were going to be able to handle this.
So then at what point did you realize that COVID-19 was serious, or did you not think it was that serious?
I did, but I think that the hardest part was probably seeing the pictures and videos of, I think that once the hospitals became overpopulated and they weren't able to see and treat anybody else, and then the bodies of the deceased being carried out and put in refrigerated trucks, I think that was probably the scariest of everything. And just realizing this is really happening. I think that was probably the scariest of everything. Just not having the capacity and not having the help to be able to treat people that were being affected and diagnosed with COVID at the time.
So then going back into what you said earlier about your children having COVID, at least the younger 2, how did it impact them?
The youngest was just very sick, and it was hard for him to really speak on his symptoms. A lot of times we heard and saw through the media outlets, that, the typical symptoms of COVID, but it was difficult for him to tell me anything as far as if he could taste or smell as one of the main symptoms, and then what exactly he was being affected with. But the other one, my middle son, because he's autistic and he also has issues with communication, it was also difficult for him to communicate to me what he was feeling through his symptoms. The only reason we were able to obviously confirm that it was COVID was because we got tested. For my middle son, the one with autism, I don't think he realized it was COVID. It was very hard for him to grasp the concept of COVID. I know that obviously he didn't feel well and it was painful for him, actually. But I don't think he grasped the concept of COVID. He just knew that he was sick. For me, it was scary. I didn't know what impact that was going to have on his immune system. I didn't know how his body was going to react to it. Overall, he is a healthy boy. But I think that that's probably the scariest part of COVID, is just not knowing how your body will react to it. So that was probably our greatest concern for everyone here in our household.
So then what about you personally? How did you feel whenever you were have testing positive with COVID?
Uh, it was it was painful too. I think my symptoms were probably the harshest out of everybody in our household. The lingering effects after I started testing negative for it, once I recovered, was the cough and how tired I felt very quickly after any kind of physical activity. That was probably the biggest adjustment after recovering from COVID. We obviously isolated ourselves and quarantined together as a family, but I was surprised that I didn't get COVID earlier. I guess I was surprised that it took me as long as it did, because it was only a couple of months ago that we had COVID. So I guess I was surprised that it took as long as it did for us to get it, because of how quickly it was spreading. So it was, like I said, it was very painful in the chest. I was scared. I wasn't sure how severe it was going to be. I am also overall pretty healthy, so I don't think I was scared of, maybe I don't think I was scared of dying from it, but I just wasn't sure how serious it was going to get, the effects of it. I wasn't sure how that was going to affect my body.
So then how did it feel for other family members? How did it feel for you and other family members with being impacted with COVID-19?
Well, our family here in Kingsville, we don't have any immediate family here in town. It's only us. So they were worried because they couldn't be close to us. I know back home in San Antonio, our family was able to help each other when they went through it. Here, they did try, but they obviously, since they're not here in person, they were able to help us with like meal deliveries and things of that sort. But I think it's just, to them, it was just worrying about if we were going to have what we needed being out here without our immediate family. Um, my mom, who is obviously older and she has a compromised immune system, she fortunately up till now has not had COVID. And she took, we tried to take all the precautions and measures with her because of her compromised immune system. So I'm sure as a mom, she worried about all of her kids as well, making sure that we all tried to stay healthy. But we've done our best to try to keep her healthy and safe as well, just because she's probably the one with the most compromised immune system right now.
Thank you. So then, how was it after COVID, or what was the difference between pre-COVID and now, and how you would live your daily life?
I think we're still taking the precautions. I know I am. I still wear my masks. Um, and even though we did sanitize our hands before, I think that now we are checking and double checking to make sure that we have our hand sanitizers. We're still trying to limit some of the gatherings. We don't really, I think that people are still worried about it. I think we're still nervous about that.
So then, speaking of your gatherings with your family, how has COVID impacted your family gatherings and events? Have you been able to host anything since the start of COVID?
With people that we've been around pretty often and have tested, yes, we do ask and make sure that we try our best to have people be honest with us if they have, oh my God, any symptoms um, or anything like that. But oh my God, I'm so sorry, Megan.
It is perfectly fine. You're okay.
Give me 1 second, please.
Yes, ma'am.
I apologize about that.
It is perfectly okay. Could you elaborate more with the events with your friends and how honest they've been with you so far?
Yes, I mean, I think everyone, as far as COVID goes, is trying to be, we hope that everyone tries to be as honest as they can about their symptoms. And that's all that we do ask. But um, we just try, for us as well, my family specifically, I try to make sure that if any of us is sick or anything like that, we're not attending things that we shouldn't be either. We have been limiting our exposure and family gatherings back home with our family, our extended family that doesn't live here. Also, for the sake of my mom, like I mentioned, she has the compromised immune system, so we are trying to limit that. Um, but it is nice that now, with it, as you can say, it's kind of slowing down. It is nice to be able to still kind of slowly get back into that and being able to be around loved ones again. Um, the few gatherings that we have had, we try to host them outdoors, as opposed to having them indoors and everyone, too close or anything like that.
So I know that Easter has recently passed. What were some precautions or how did you celebrate Easter as of recently?
We kept it small as far as our gathering and how many people um, attended. It wasn't, our family did not come over here, but we were able to host a small gathering with just our neighbors, and we were outside as well. We didn't get to host anything indoor. We kept it outside and light. And that was pretty much it. We just made sure that everyone was sort of social distancing. Fortunately, it wasn't the area that we were hosting it in wasn't packed as far as the public um, goes. So it was just our close friends that were able to attend.
So then through your neighbors and friends, how do you think COVID has impacted them personally?
I think the same way as for us. I'm sure they're still taking precautions. They, I'm sure now we're just valuing our time together a lot more because we weren't able to see each other as often before. So I know that we can all definitely appreciate that a lot more now. But I'm sure they're still taking the same precautions that we are as far as social distancing, just trying to wean ourselves back into some kind of normality and just being around others that way.
All right, thank you. So now we will be moving into more of the education side. I know you had said that you have a 7-year-old son diagnosed with autism. How has his reaction and adjustment been to learning through COVID?
His impact was probably the hardest as far as adjustment goes. He did not acclimate easily. It was very difficult for him to grasp the concept of COVID, much less why school was shutting down and all of the effects that came along with COVID. He could not understand why he couldn't go to school anymore, why he couldn't go and play on the playground, why the playground was closed every day, all of the public gatherings that we used to attend, why he couldn't go to any of that. So it was very difficult. He is a child of, he likes his routine. It's in his nature to have a schedule and routine and keep it all the same. So for him to everything be completely turned upside down and changing from one minute to the next was very difficult. Um, Even now, I think that I still have to kind of remind him about that and talk him through it. Now he got I mean, it's been a while, but he's finally comfortable with wearing a mask. We couldn't get him to adjust to that as well. And I know in the beginning it was a requirement at some point to wear a mask out in public or in public places, and it was very difficult for him to keep that on. So a lot of times we ended up just staying home, uh, just for the simple fact that he wouldn't be able to keep it on. Um, but I think that we did our best. I did my best in trying to help him and my family navigate through this. He now, I mean, I think that he's done a lot better at getting adjusted and being able to cope with the changes that have happened. But I'm sure that once things go back to normal, hopefully, it'll be a process to wean him off of all of that again. So we'll see how that goes.
So then what about for you or your older son? Are you pursuing an education right now, or is it just your son, your other son?
I am. I'm actually a student at the university here in Kingsville at Tamuk. And I'm pursuing an education in communication sciences as well. So um, that for me going back to school was an adjustment in itself. But then when you add the COVID effects and everything, that was a lot as well. It hasn't been easy. It has not been easy. It's been years since I've been in school and since I've attended. So having to learn the process again and having to learn it with the new technologies, that was that was a lot. But I think I've done a pretty good job at adjusting and acclimating to that as best as I have been able to, at least.
All right. So then how has it been for your older son, Giovanni?
I think he was the one that adjusted the best. He's a very resilient boy. And I think that even though at times it must have been difficult, and I'm sure he missed his friends, missed his sports activities more than anything, he did his best to just adjust. He knew that, I think in his mind, he felt that this wasn't going to last forever. He was just hoping for it to be over as soon as it possibly could. But he did a really good job at getting through it and just adjusting overall.
So for all of y'all in y'all's family who are currently pursuing an education, have the schools or anything provided any good resources or technologies that have been a great help to y'all?
As far as my children go, the schools have been in constant communication, especially in the beginning of COVID. They did give reports often as far as if any staff member or faculty if they've tested positive, they let us know immediately. I mean, I believe on a daily basis, we were getting calls if anybody tested positive. And they were very understanding if the kids were sick. They tried to adjust as best as they could as far as providing that support for the kids and for the parents if anyone got sick. Um, they were a little bit more lenient for schoolwork and deadline, but they did expect it to be turned in. So I just appreciated the support and understanding, I guess. And as for me and my school, I think that they offered a lot of testing sites. And I thought that that was really great. Before I started school, it was difficult to get tested. It was difficult to find a testing site. And then when you did find one, it was a long wait. And then when you got tested, it was a longer wait to get your test results back. They weren't immediate right away. They weren't immediately available right away. So going to college, I definitely did appreciate that they offered free testing to the students and our results were available right away as well. So that was a huge relief. And I think it brought comfort to everyone knowing if whether or not you were positive, even being asymptomatic, you could still be positive. So I think that really helped.
That's very interesting. Going into the testings that y'all did, I would like to speak a little bit about the vaccinations. Have you gotten a vaccination yet?
I have not. Out of the family members that live in my household at the moment, my husband is the only one that has received the vaccine, and that was because it became a requirement for his job. I'm pretty well, I can't say for sure, but I'm almost positive that had it not been a requirement, I'm pretty sure he probably wouldn't have received the vaccine as well. So he is the only one at the moment that has the vaccine.
So then what has been the thought process through that, and why have you been hesitant about it?
Personally, I was hesitant for the simple fact that I felt like it was still new, and it wasn't so much as if it was going to work or not. I think that my greatest concern was more of how my body was going to react to the vaccine. And I know a lot of the speculation on the effects of the vaccines were in relation to how the body would react to it and how everyone would react differently to it. So that was my concern. And I think that that's what I feared for my kids as well. At first, I mean, up until recently, they didn't have a vaccine for the younger kids. Obviously, they do now, but I also felt guilty and I felt bad if I was vaccinated and there wasn't one available for my younger children. I just wasn't sure how we were going to react to it. I'm happy and I'm glad now that things are slowing down a little bit, and hopefully it's only a matter of time before, this becomes like the chicken pox and it goes away eventually. But until then, I mean, we'll see. I'd like to know a little bit more and get more research and statistics, I suppose, about it, about the vaccines before I say yes to that.
So then I know that COVID has proven to be very much of a physical health problem, but how has COVID-19 been on you mentally?
My anxiety has probably been the most affected. In all of this, I grew a lot of anxiety just out of worrying about the outcome of everything, constantly worrying about my children. There was always unexpected changes in our daily routine, just for the simple fact that if a student became positive and they were in direct contact with my children, we had to get them tested right away. And the next thing you know, they're in quarantine, whether or not they test, while we're waiting for the results, we're already in quarantine and waiting, and they're missing school. And then I can't go to school, and it's just it's a domino effect. A lot of constant changes happening just from one minute to the next. So my anxiety was affected the most about that. Just a lot of worrying, a lot of uncertainty. I think that was probably the greatest effect for my mental health. Of course, when you're in quarantine, it's also lonely. I mean, we didn't get to see a lot of our family. I missed my mom more than anything. And my youngest, who didn't get to be around kids normally for the first, I guess, year and a half, he didn't get that social aspect of being around other kids and play dates and things of that sort. Javi, as we were trying to get him started and helping him with his social communication, that was something else that was affected for him. So that came to a complete and abrupt halt, and that therapy had to be stopped. So I was looking forward to helping him advance in that, and it just that didn't happen right away. So yeah, a lot of worrying. Definitely a lot of worrying and anxiety during that period.
I'm very sorry that you have been experiencing a lot of anxiety and worry. For the next section, I will be going into politics. How do you believe politics have affected how COVID has been handled as of recently?
Unfortunately, I do think that COVID has been affected highly by politics, and I think it's sad. I don't think that we're looking at the real facts and statistics. I think that a lot of people have been pulling in one direction or another simply for the fact of their own political preferences. That's what I feel that they have based all of the information that has been put out there. I feel like a lot of the times it's been based on their political preference, and that's how they're portraying it as well. Like I mentioned, for myself personally, my personal stance on the vaccine has nothing to do with politics. It is simply on my own reaction of how I believe my body may or may not react to it. But I think that a lot of people believe that there's an agenda behind the vaccine, and then they want to affiliate that with politics.
So then how has COVID affected the politics in your area, that being maybe Texas or Kingsville?
Just those that are for and against the vaccines, a lot of times they want to label that. If you're for the vaccine, you're with this political party. If you're not for the vaccine, then you're with this political party. And it's just a stereotype, and it's a labeling instead of just having the vaccine as one thing or one issue and your political party is keeping it separate. I think that a lot of people are confusing the two. I mean, at some point, yes, those issues do go hand in hand as far as what actions are going to be taken. But I think that the vaccine is a personal preference. That is a personal stance, and it shouldn't be affected by your political views. I just don't believe in that.
So then earlier, I remember you saying that your husband works in the base in Kingsville. So has COVID impacted his work so far?
Not as far as he was considered an essential worker, so his work never slowed down. I mean, it's fortunate, and at the same time, it was kind of scary. But fortunately, we did not have to deal with him being without work because he is the only one working at the moment here in our household. So fortunately, that was not a challenge as far as him not having any work. And contrary, he ended up they ended up having more work than I think they ever did before. So it didn't skip a beat. He left often, and he was still working regular hours. What did get affected was, as I mentioned, the requirement of having the vaccine, as well as at one point there was the mask mandate, and those rules had to be followed. There were no exceptions at all when it came to that. But that's pretty much it. I don't think it was affected in any other way at the time.
So then speaking of work, has the nature of finding work changed for the public as far as what's happened through COVID-19?
Yes, I think that people are becoming a little bit more comfortable with, well, people in general, but also companies and businesses. I think that they're becoming a little bit more comfortable with the from home situations. I think that companies are finding ways to make that available for their employees now. COVID isn't 100% gone, I don't believe, although it has scaled back a lot, fortunately. But I mean, I think it's still lingering. So in order for the companies to still have that workforce available, I think that they're trying to accommodate the employees as much as possible. With the stimulus and a lot of the unemployment funds that were being distributed, I think a lot of times some of the people that I guess were able to benefit from that, at some point, some of them did get a little comfortable, and it took them a little while to get back into the workforce mindset. So I think that that's part of the COVID effect as well. We're just trying to get back into having things be normal again. So I think right now, a lot of the companies are going to cater to that. They're going to try to cater to their employees as much as possible. If it means them working from home, I think they're going to find a way to do that.
So then this next section of the interview is going to contain a little bit of sensitive information. So I implore you to be careful and not to give any people's names that you do not wish to be compromised when talking about their immigration status or such. Do you have any new worries regarding you or your family members' documentation status?
New worries, I don't think so. I think my worries sort of settled. I think at the time that COVID broke out, yes, I do have family members that are not fully processed, I guess. And at the time, because of such a strong political stance that people were taking with COVID and the vaccines and just everything in general that was happening. I mean, at that time, they were closing borders and blaming other countries because of that. Yeah, sure. There was definitely a lot of worry. Right now, where we're at in this moment, I don't think my worry is as great. Is it gone? No, but I don't think it's as great as it was back then. I mean, things are still uncertain, but I feel like we're heading in a better direction with that. I think that fear is just what played the biggest part, the biggest role in that. Blaming others, blaming the countries, and all of that sort. I think that that's what played the biggest role in that, was just fear. People were scared. So yeah, I mean, it's not completely gone, my worries for my family and my relatives like that, but I think it's going to be okay.
So then, as far as finances, have you been able to send money to your family that does not live with you throughout the impact of COVID, or has it been a little bit of a struggle?
No, my family, fortunately, they all do have employment, and I want to say only my oldest sister was probably the only one that was affected the most, and we were able to help her. But everybody else, for the most part, was able to maintain their employment throughout the pandemic, except for when everything shut down for that time period when we all were on lockdown. But even then, fortunately for them, their employers were so generous and they were actually very helpful. So they were able to help them through that so that they didn't do without. So that was, I mean, that's a huge blessing, I think, for anyone to have an employer help them through that. Because I know a lot of people were not fortunate enough for that.
Very much so. And then I believe you had previously stated that you are home and getting educated. How do you think your duties from home have shifted pre-COVID to now in COVID, as far as running your household and such?
Well, I've always juggled a lot. And I mean, being a stay-at-home mom, you have to try to cover everything. But that multitasking, I don't think that I had ever experienced the level of it prior to COVID. I think that once COVID hit, because of so many unexpected changes that would happen on a daily basis, I think that that's where my multitasking was tested above everything else. That and also just simply helping my children and in general navigate through everything COVID. And that's while I wasn't sure of how things were going to go. And I was not sure how all of this was going to play out, but I had to try my best just to be there for them and support them and help them through it.
So then a few more questions I have for you are, how has your perspective been on readjusting to going back outside in the world?
Um, I don't, I can't say that I'm 100% comfortable. I'm still adjusting because I feel like we spent so much time in closure, but I, we're cautious. That's all we can do at the moment, is just take precaution. We still sanitize as often as possible and wash our hands when we need to. That's pretty much the basis of all of it. Um, I don't take those moments for granted when I am able to gather with family members and friends, because obviously we miss them a lot, and it was hard while we were on lockdown and in quarantine. So I don't take those moments for granted. I feel like now, because we've been through all of that, I think we all appreciate those moments so much more. But the precautions, we're still taking the same ones. I mean, they're still there. They're still there.
So then what are some items that you take with you now that COVID is now your new adjusted life that you
We
didn't
still
use before?
have our masks, and I just, double check that we have sanitizers, hand sanitizers more than anything, disinfectant wipe, uh, just keeping those on in stock. I make sure I have them in my car, I have them in my purse, the diaper bags, whatever it is. We have them pretty much everywhere, just to make sure that they're always available and on hand when we need them.
So then now I will go into a little bit more of an opinionated area as far as the protests that have gone on through COVID-19. What was your take on those protests?
Um, I think again, a lot of the basis for the protests overlapped. I don't think that they were 100% clear and directly towards or against COVID or one specific area. I think that a lot of them went hand in hand and they overlapped, but which I think made it a lot more difficult to sympathize with. I think that the mindset that some people may have that one solution is the right solution for everyone, I think that that's probably the hardest to take in. And I don't agree with that. I don't, that's why I strongly believe that the vaccine, for example, is a personal preference. It's not for everybody and it shouldn't be for everybody. It should be optional. But if you're not going to take it, then you do need to take the precautions and measurements that are necessary. So when it came to the protesting and everything else that was involved with it, I think that there were a lot of gray areas with that. It wasn't directed or only based on COVID and the vaccines. I think politics played a lot in that, and it was just being pulled out of proportion. And there was a lot of misconception through the media. I don't think the facts were given out straightforward either. So a lot of it was manipulated, and it's unfortunate, but I think that that definitely adds to the chaos. None of this is easy. I don't think there's a clear solution for all of this. But like I mentioned, that mindset of one solution is the right solution for everybody, that just doesn't work. There's no way. That's not going to work.
So then, is there anything else that you would like to include in this interview that I had not previously talked about, as far as family or personal goals and life aspects moving on from here?
No, I just feel that maybe, who knows what the future is going to hold as far as COVID goes. I think that going through this period, a lot of us learned from it. We definitely learned a lot. For me personally, I just learned to appreciate my family a lot more. Anything can change right away. But because we didn't know how everything was going to play out, I think that it brought us closer than that because we were able to stick together. So, like I said, COVID isn't completely gone, but I feel a lot more positive now that it's slowing down. And I think that I can only hope that, our future is going to look a lot brighter now with this behind us.
So then, has there been anybody else that you wish to mention inside of this interview that I had not mentioned yet?
No, I don't think so.
All right, then. Thank you so much, Miss Denny Garces, for interviewing for this time. I have learned so much from you within this time, and I have learned more about your personal well-being, and I gladly enjoyed being able to take this time with you and truly grasp what it is of another person's life throughout experiencing COVID.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Megan.
All right. Thank you very, very much. I will be letting you go now, and this will conclude the end of my interview for the South Texas Archives at Texas A&M Library.